You know that feeling, the crunch of metal, the sudden stop, and that moment of shock. You're okay, thank goodness. But then you see them, the flashing lights of a tow truck pulling up. It's a super stressful situation, and let's be honest, the last thing you're thinking about is the bill. But that tow, it definitely has a price tag. So that's the real mystery we're digging into. When you're standing on the side of the road in a daze, who is it that's actually setting the price to clear up the mess? And more importantly, is there anyone making sure that price is fair, that you're not being taken for a ride?
All right, let's get right into it. We're going to figure out exactly how that number on your towing invoice gets decided, especially on what could be one of your worst days.
And how are we going to do that?
Well, our guide for this whole explainer is right here, an official draft report from Victoria's Essential Services Commission. This is the document, the investigation, that literally sets the rules of the road. Okay, first things first, we've got to be super clear about what we're talking about here. Because believe it or not, the government doesn't regulate every single tow truck out there. Not all tows are created equal.
The magic words are accident towing. It's an official term, and it means exactly what it sounds like. We are only talking about the service of towing a banged-up vehicle directly from the scene of a crash. It's a very specific, highly regulated service.
And this slide really breaks it down. On the left, you've got the regulated accident towing we're focusing on. But on the right, you have everything else, which falls under trade towing. That's for, a simple breakdown, getting towed from a clearway, or even moving a boat. The prices for that stuff, mostly unregulated. We're staying in the left lane today. And we can get even more laser-focused. These rules only apply to accidents inside the Melbourne-controlled area, and only for regular cars and light trucks. The review looks at the costs for the tow itself plus storage. And this whole thing gets a refresh every 4 years, just to make sure the prices are still making sense. So who are the people actually crunching these numbers? And how in the world do they decide what a fair price even is? The main player in this story is the Essential Services Commission, or the ESC for short. They're an independent government regulator. You can think of them as the umpire, making sure there's a fair game being played between the towing industry and, well, you. So the ESC uses what they call a benchmarking approach, which is really just a fancy way of saying they do a whole lot of comparison shopping. First, they check out what other cities like Sydney and Adelaide are charging. Then they look at the difference between the regulated prices and the unregulated ones right here in Victoria. And finally, they actually talk to the tow truck operators and industry folks to get their real-world data and feedback. So, after all that digging and all those comparisons, what did the commission actually find? Let's get right to the verdict, the 4 big recommendations they came up with.
Honestly, this one quote from the report really tells you almost everything you need to know. What they're saying is, hey, we looked deep into this, and overall, the system is working as intended. They didn't find any huge glaring problems that needed a complete overhaul.
And that leads us to the biggest recommendation of all. Keep the base towing fees exactly as they are. So what does this mean for you? It means stability. You're not going to see a sudden massive jump in the base fee you have to pay after an accident. And it's pretty much the same story for storage fees. So if your car has to sit in a storage yard for a few days while you sort out insurance, you can be confident that the daily rate is considered fair and isn't going to suddenly shoot through the roof.
Okay, this one's a little more technical, a bit in the weeds, but it's important. Every year, there's a tiny 0.5% deduction from the price adjustment for productivity. It's basically the government's way of saying they expect towing companies to get a little more efficient over time, and that tiny saving gets passed on to you. The commission looked at it and said, yep, that still works, let's keep it.
And finally, we get to salvage. This is for those really tricky recoveries, like if your car is stuck down an embankment. For now, the commission has decided that these fees aren't out of control and they don't need to be officially price controlled. Okay, enough of the official report stuff. Let's get down to brass tacks. What does all this actually mean for your wallet on the day you might need a tow? All right, so here's the number to have in your head. The starting point, the base hookup fee for a standard tow that's less than 8 kilometers is going to be right around $265. But, and this is a really big but, that's just the start. That bill can climb, and it can climb fast. For every kilometer you go over that initial 8, you're adding about $4.20. Need a tow late at night? That's about a $90 surcharge. On a public holiday, tack on another $75. You add in daily storage fees, maybe a charge for getting it out of a tricky underground car park. You see how that initial number can grow. So once your car is safely on the back of that truck, its journey isn't over. It's really just beginning.
and it's headed to one of two main destinations: a repair shop or a storage yard to, well, await its fate.
So here's how those two paths usually play out. If your car can be fixed, it gets towed to a repair shop that you choose, and the insurance process kicks off. But if it's a total write-off, it goes to a storage yard. Now from there, you can actually sell it to a car removal service. You've probably seen those Cash for Cars ads. They'll literally come, haul away the wreck, and give you some money for the scrap metal. So when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway? The government's deep dive confirms that the system we have for accident towing is, well, it's working. The main goal here is to provide stability and fairness in a really chaotic situation. And the conclusion is that it's doing its job. It's built for consistency, not for constant drastic changes. Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. In the absolute chaos of a car crash, a totally unpredictable moment, does knowing that at least this one cost is benchmarked, regulated, and stable, does that provide even a small piece of certainty on what might just be one of your worst days? It's something to consider.